Another panel coming right up. Hacking HR Initiative and HR World are partners with the mission to radically influence the current HR reality. To convince you that this mission is not a fantasy, you will be hearing the stories of all Hacking HR chapters from the region during the HR Week conference. Therefore, I would like to invite the moderator of this panel, Enrique Rubio, to initiate the discussion.
Hello. Hi, Giovanna. How are you?
Welcome, Enrique. I'm very well, thank you. How are you?
Good. Thank you so much for inviting me, the panelists, of course, and including our community Hacking HR in this fantastic week for the progress and innovation in HR. Thank you.
Thank you so much for accepting our invite and good luck with your panel.
Thank you. Hello, everybody. As I wait for my colleagues to join me in the screen, it's a privilege to be with you today. I'm sure that you are having a fantastic time with this amazing event. And just to tell you a couple of things about Hacking HR, we are a global learning community bringing together people, well, from all over the world, HR leaders, HR practitioners, getting together to discuss, understand, learn, share, collaborate, support each other, and also challenge each other around all things that are at the intersection of the future of work, technology, innovation, organizations, people transformation, and of course, the impact in the world of HR. So the motto of Hacking HR is we're trying to create the best HR that has ever existed. And there's a lot of work to do in order for us to be able to achieve that, in order for us to be able to create that best HR that has ever existed. And that's going to be the topic of our conversation today. And I want to welcome my fellow panelists, Tanal, Candy, and Matt, very good friends, incredible leaders in the HR space, doing amazing things to, create this best HR that has ever existed. So we're going to begin by a quick round of introductions. So I'm going to go around. Tanal, do you want to kick off telling us a little bit about yourself? And then we move to Candy and then Matt.
Sure. Hi, everyone. I'm Tanal. I'm head of people and culture at a crowdfunding platform called LaunchGood. I'm also co-founder of a peer-to-peer platform that enables and accelerates women in leadership. I'm originally from West Africa, Sierra Leone. I've helped build 3 companies from the ground up. And I'm really excited to be here with you all and learning and, exploring this conversation on the future of work.
Thank you, Tanal. It's always a privilege to be sharing the stage with you. Thank you. Candy.
Hi, yes, I'm Candy Gongora. I'm with Goodway Group, and we are a marketing company, and I am in the United States, in the state of Texas, and I have been building different functions throughout my whole career, and I'm currently the head of people and organizational excellence.
Awesome, Candy. Thanks for joining. And it's always inspiring. Candy is the queen of all inspiring words. You can tell that in her background. And every time that we get to chat with her, it's amazing because we get a little dose of inspiration from her words and from her words spoken and the words that she has on the wall. So thank you, Candy, for joining us.
Thank you.
And my friend, Matt Burns. How are you, Matt?
What am I bringing a dose of today? That's a good question.
You are bringing the Canadian love, my friend.
That I will bring, I promise. Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. My name is Matt Burns, 20 years in the corporate world, 15 in HR, the last 5 as an HR executive with companies like Walmart and Yisk. More recently, I launched 2 organizations, Bento HR, that focuses on digital HR transformation, and most recently, the Global HR Summit, HR's first virtual reality conference.
Thank you, Matt. And Matt is not only a good friend of mine, but also one of those leaders, global leaders, who are truly embodying the idea of creating the best HR that has ever existed by bringing HR to the edge of competitiveness, innovation, technology by doing all the things it's doing. So thank you, Matt, for joining as well. And my name is Enrique Rubio. I am the founder of Hacking HR. Also, I've been in the workforce for a long time. I began my career working in technology. Then I switched to HR, which gives me an amazing perspective of the two worlds, the world of HR and the world of technology. So let's kick off this conversation by asking the three of you this question. When I say, or when we say the best HR that has ever existed, what is the best HR? What does the best HR in the world look like? Candy, you want to kick off this conversation?
Sure, I would be happy to. The best HR, that includes a whole new world, actually, if you think about it. It's going from being very transactional and focused on policies and rules to being motivating and inspiring and focusing on building a more human organization where people can come to work and feel like they belong, be their best self, their full self, and they are able to make an impact with the purpose of the organization. I think that the best HR has a very solid employee experience. It's well known. It has feedback loops so that we can continuously make improvements both to the experience, but also for the business, and making sure that we're creating the best type of environment to achieve our purpose and from both standpoints, from the employee and from the organization.
Absolutely. An HR that is truly the best HR that has ever existed is an HR that is both pro-business, pro-organization, and pro-people. It's through the work with these two stakeholders that we can achieve that goal of becoming the best HR that has ever existed. Matt, what do you think? What does the best HR look like for you?
Very different than it looks like today.
Yeah.
So I think to hit on Candy's point, I would take a different type of continuum. I think it goes from administration into performance. And why I say that is we've graduated now in a society to a knowledge-based economy where individual performance is a competitive advantage inside of organizations, which means the programs that we developed in the past, that I developed in the past, that were focused in on providing a consistent experience to every single person. And you see the same thing, by the way, in education, in healthcare. Those have to change. Things have to become more customized, more individualized to people in the organization. And the great news is now we have technology to do that. So I see HR professionals becoming more like performance coaches, trying to squeeze the most performance out of individuals, teams, and ultimately the organization. And to me, that's what HR of the future looks like when you talk about the best HR.
Absolutely. And that fits very beautifully with what Candy said before, is the HR that is helping people be their best self, their full self, and truly belong to the organization and achieve or help achieve that purpose, that impact the organization is looking forward to achieve. Tanal, what do you think about that?
Yeah, no, I totally agree with everything you said. I think HR really is at the epicenter of an organization, and it really needs to embody the values of the organization, perpetuate it, making sure that we are, as HR folks, being proactive and building that environment and the ecosystem so that people can collaborate, make decisions intentionally, and just do their best work, and in a way that taps into their strengths, but also brings the business result at the end of the day, because that's what it's a holistic thought to it. So to bring this more in context, we saw a little bit of that during COVID. In March, when COVID hit, I mean, HR folks really stepped up into the calling, and they became more agile, and they forgot about processes, and they started listening more. So we can always go back to that. But to me, that's what HR is really bringing strategic and execution and helping the employees and the organization as a whole move forward.
Absolutely. And for those of you who are just tuning in now, we're asking the question of what is the best HR that we can create? What is the best HR ever? And we've got a range of fantastic answers. An HR that is going from transaction, from administration to humanity, to humans, helping people thrive, flourish, at work and becoming their best self. It's an HR that has a solid employee experience, but that is also a performance coach that is moving from just administering processes to helping people truly, once again, be their best self at work. And of course, it's an HR that is focused on the strategy and the execution of that strategy. So Tana, I want to stay with you 1 second and ask you this next question. All that we've been chatting about here, about this best HR that has ever existed, is intuitive, right? It's the HR that is truly helping people grow, develop, thrive and succeed at work. And while we do that, the organization hopefully succeeds as well. But the reality is that when we look at the workplace, that hasn't truly happened that much, right? That there are some barriers preventing us from truly achieving that. So let me ask you this, starting with you and to the rest of the panelists as well. What do you think are the greatest challenges and opportunities for HR going forward?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of challenges, but to start at a higher level, I think the workforce is becoming more dynamic. Change is so constant that it's harder for people to catch up, especially HR if we're stuck in processes. So HR really needs to aim high, take measured risks, lead with resilience, but also making sure that we never stop learning, both as HR folks and as an organization. And so I think the main challenge is really a mindset shift, really looking at it. So when I started in HR, there was a lot of pushback, and it showed me that there's two sides to HR. And one of them is that HR doesn't have a lot of credibility within organizations, within certain organizations. That's starting to change, but I think it really needs to be starting with a mindset shift, starting from leadership, from HR folks, but also going through to the organization. So that's where I would start with the challenges, really helping HR build credibility.
Yeah, absolutely. Candy, let me turn it over to you. And if you want to add any challenge, but also the opportunities, what we in this world that is chaotic and uncertain, and like Tana said before, things are changing so fast and all the time. It seems that there could be a great opportunity for us to truly shine and finally say, you know what, let's use this as a leverage, as a springboard to do things differently. So what do you think are these opportunities that we have now and into the future?
Sure. One opportunity building on Tanal is to help shift the mindset of the organization. So partner with that CEO. If the CEO is still very traditional, or the leadership team, help them see something different and what the benefit of that is. And so kind of help shift that mindset. So I see a real opportunity is to change the way the organization actually operates. You think about what's going on today. People had to go to their homes and be remote. They had to be more agile and take risk, as Sanal's mentioned. And I think you can really build on that and try a few tests. Blow up the performance management system, right? It's different now. We're working differently. So try something different, use some agile methods. And I think that if we could be the role model of that, and we can just start by throwing out our processes a little bit and focus more on the people and what we're trying to create with a few tests, then people can see that and feel that change, and that will help in some of the differences we need to see. And so I think huge opportunity there.
Absolutely. And that ties back to one question that people always ask, and that is, I want to do things differently, but my leadership, this or that, it's always, not always, but very often they put the blame on the leadership team that may not belong to the HR space. And I think, like you're saying, it's a great opportunity for us to advocate change with the leaders so that together we can move the organization forward. Matt, challenges, opportunities, what do you think?
I had a really great mentor once who used the phrase constraints drive innovation, which, by the way, was the precursor to him always saying my budget was about to be cut. And the reality is it's true. We have constraints. And I think that whether you're in Central Europe, North America, Asia Pacific, we're all going to have to operate within constraints over at least the next 12 to 24 months. And at the same time, to the points of Tanal and to Candy, we're going to have to innovate simultaneously, which would seemingly be impossible. When you think about innovation, you think about massive investments and infusions of capital and cash. We're going to have to get very good at operating within constraints and building the plane while we fly it. And a great example of that, Enrique, as you know, was the Global HR Summit. So prior to March of 2020, my experience, my chance to spend time in virtual reality was very limited. I'd put a headset on 2 or 3 times with my brother and my nieces and nephews. We played some games together. But when March hit, I looked at my co-founder and said, the world's about to completely change. So organizations are traditionally used to spending time inside the 4 walls of an office or offices. They rely very heavily on informal communication, whether it is those hallway conversations, those proverbial water cooler chats. And they're now going to go to a world where we're all remote, but we still have to find a way to connect, to collaborate, to innovate. And with respect to the traditional 2-dimensional communication methods like Zoom or phone calls or instant messaging, they don't cut it for the more intimate conversations. When we looked around in the marketplace, we said, virtual reality might be a solution to that problem. So what we did over the course of essentially April to September when we launched the conference was we used that experience to be a giant focus group. And we learned as much in those 5 months as I had learned about virtual reality in the previous 38 years of my life. And we tested the concept with one-to-one conversations, with small team huddles. We had presentations. Enrique, Candy, you were on panels. We had a number of people testing different modalities using this technology. And as a consequence of that, we were able to get a ton of feedback about what works about virtual reality inside of organizations and where it's best suited. So now going forward, we can provide advice to organizations looking to reconnect at a time when we can't come together in the same physical space. We could have said, hey, the world's changing, there's a pandemic, there's an economic crisis, so we're just going to kind of ride this out. But instead, we decided to use it as a springboard, to use your word, Enrique, as a springboard to drive innovation and ultimately be in service to other people. I think if we use that type of a microcosm in an HR context, we all have the same opportunity inside of our organizations.
Absolutely. It's the opportunity to truly get rid of the box. I'm not even going to say think outside of the box, but get rid of the box and do things radically different. And I've been saying for quite a while now that because of the pace at which the world is moving today, the incremental changes that we've seen in the world of HR are not enough anymore to catch up with the things that are happening outside of HR. We need more radical, dramatic leaps of progress into the future. And of course, VR is definitely one of those. So now let me ask you this question. One thing that I gotta confess, being an event organizer, one thing that always concerns me a little bit is, well, actually pretty much a lot concerns me when I'm putting together conversations or events, is that what happens when people hear all these ideas and they say, yes, this is fantastic, but then, next day they are back into their reality, right? They are back into normal and they don't get the chance to either implement, or they forget it, or they perhaps don't care, which is even worse. So I want to ask you, and I want to get really tactical in here. What do you think are the capabilities that HR needs as a function and the skills that the individuals in HR need in order to create this best HR that has ever existed, this best HR ever? Capabilities for the HR function and skills for the individuals. What are those? Matt, I'm going to begin with you.
I'm going to go against your advice. I'm going to start high and then I'm going to go low. So I think the first thing, well, you know me, Enrique, you knew when you gave me this opportunity that I was going to do my own thing, and that just
do it.
I think the first thing, I spent the better part of 6 months. I felt it was very an interesting time for me during the pandemic, because previous to this, I was a CHRO. So I can very much feel the experience of the people in this group who went through significant changes in organizations. But when it came to February and March, I didn't have an organization to call my own. I had my small company that I was working with, but I kind of felt like a firefighter without a fire station. I didn't really have a purpose. So what I did was I spent a lot of time on the phone talking to other HR leaders and helping coach and counsel them through the challenges they were facing, whether it was office closures, restructuring organizations, making some tough decisions around talent, technology innovation. And what I learned through that was that something I already had kind of inherently known, but HR people take a lot of this stuff really personally.
Yeah.
And I think that we take the responsibility of the culture and the emotional well-being of our employees on personally. So I think the first thing that I would say is we need to deploy a bit of empathy.
Yeah.
We've done an incredible job over the last 6 months during the most challenging period of time for any of us in our careers. There is no playbook, there is no MBA program, there is no like roadmap on how to deal with a global pandemic mixed with an economic crisis with no warning. Like, to go through that experience and to come out the other side with an organization that's largely intact is an incredible accomplishment. So I would say first and foremost, give yourselves a congratulatory pat in the back and deploy some empathy for the tough decisions that you had to make in a very short period of time. Now, to answer your question and to get more tactical, I think now is the time to take that empathy, but also take away the ego from what's happening within inside your department. And now is the time to go down to the studs, go right down to the base of your processes and ask yourself, are what we're doing in the context of the employee experience, if we journey map the employee experience step by step from attraction to retention, does it make sense? And I'm going to wager a guess that in a lot of cases, the answer is no, that it was built for a model that wasn't predicated on this new hybrid world of work. It assumed the majority of people in the workplace, physically at offices, physically at desks. It assumed a top-down style of management where you received direction from your senior leadership. It went down, there was layers of management. That is all changing or will change over the next 12 to 18 months. So I think to get very tactical, what I would do, the first thing I would do is perform an audit of my employee journey map from starting from that attraction phase, step by step. What are the interactions that employee has with the organization? What is the technology that we're using to power that? What is the data that we're gathering from those steps? And then how do we use the combination of data, technology, and just smart, thoughtful processes overlaying our own empathy to dig into where there are opportunities to innovate? And the second thing that I would then do is I would find people in the organization at all levels. That would mean your frontline employees, your senior leadership, your cross-functional partners, to play a role in helping you co-design this. One thing HR has a bad habit of doing is to take an idea off into the woods, work on it for about 6 months, bring it back to the company and say, ta-da, here it is. And we don't have any feedback. And then we're disappointed when people say, that's not exactly what we want. Well, the way to solve for that problem is involve them in the process much earlier, because ultimately we're in service to them. And we're not running an HR consultancy practice. We're running an organization that does a number of other functions. So getting down to the studs, digging into your processes and asking yourself what makes sense and what doesn't, involving your partners in that conversation, that's where I would go first. And then from there, you start to dig into what's the biggest priority, second biggest priority, your way down through that.
Absolutely, this is a powerful agenda, and of course, I am hoping that we truly put some energy into this in right now, but especially into 2021. Candy, what do you think are skills and capabilities for HR going forward?
Well, I love that. And if you think about what Matt just described, you could then go from there to say, what do we need? Like based on going down to the studs and doing the audit, like what do we need here at the organization as far as capabilities? And then from there, what skills? I will build on that a little bit. So we've done some of that. We've applied the customer journey, customer experience mindset internally. And so that's something to think about too. You know, I actually got certified in client experience and truly understanding that so I can know how to do that internally. And so to your point, Matt, like it does have to be personal. So where are the moments that matter and how do you make sure that they're personalized? So I think a lot of things that go into that, which you wouldn't think about, includes like the emotional intelligence. And we've heard a lot about that, but truly like you do have to have empathy for the people you're serving within the org. Like we do have to give ourselves some empathy, and we did a great job, but we have people on the front lines that are dealing with many, many challenges, and we need to listen and truly understand. And, you know, you mentioned about, you know, thinking outside the box or throwing the box away. I would encourage, let's crawl into the box with our people when we're looking at what we really need. And that means to sit there with them when they're dealing with the business challenges or their personal challenges and understanding where they come from. So we really need those listening skills. And then how do we translate that into creating a place where they can be their best and create performance? And we have to be consultants and coaches. You mentioned a performance coach, Matt, and inside our organization, we have created talent success partners. And they actually go to the teams and they work with the teams on the front line, and they're using data to understand like what's really going on when you're successful and the client's successful, why? And how can we use that with other teams, and how can we share that information, and then how can we be more predictive about putting teams together? So with that, you have to have those consultative skills, you have to understand data and analytics. You really have to, again, goes back to listening, but you have to really look at different ways of doing things, and you can't go dive in and have partnership with that team and then kind of go back to the woods and create your program, right? Once again, you have to spend the time with the team, do the minimum viable step and create something small, take it back to the team, get their feedback, have that feedback loop. So, within that, there's a lot of different capabilities and skills. Like we have to understand listening, we have to understand the employee experience. We have to have true consultative skills. We have to understand coaching.
Yeah.
It's totally different. It's not about building a program and going to a seminar or HR. You have a lot of the certifications out there where you learn about policies and procedures, and it's totally different than that. It's really having that growth mindset and diving into something and building from there.
Absolutely. It's a beautiful description, actually, of like being very far from the administration into the human development work, to be honest. Tanal, in the next couple of minutes that we had available for this panel, same question. What do you think skills and capabilities that are going to propel us forward to create this best HR ever?
Yeah, I agree with what Candy and Matt said, really. I think the focus is shifting towards what we traditionally thought of as soft skills. And while, not to discount the technical aspect of HR, but I think there is this need now to really tune in into critical thinking, empathy, making sure that we are, as HR, not working within silos, but cross-collaborating across different functions from leadership and bringing everything together. So co-creation, I think, is really the way forward. Making sure that we are creating those focus groups, Matt touched on that earlier, thinking things through from a design thinking perspective, where we're iterating, making sure we are putting in the data, listening for the feedback, and then building up on what we've learned. So creating, business as usual is being appended. And I'm ready as the next person for this to end, but we have no end in sight. So most likely 2021 is going to be another, hopefully a better version of this, because we're a little bit more prepared. But really looking at things from, okay, there is more personalization. So when you think about the employee experience, we have multiple generations within the workforce, and every one of those generations had different needs. So when you think about what those needs are and how you're going to meet them, that's really challenging. How are you going to create that sense of equity or belonging when everybody has different aspects of what they need? So it's really about bringing organizational design within the HR context. This is not going to be another, consulting thing where you bring in the big four and they give you a plan and you have to execute on it. I think it's up to us as HR folks to think about, what does remote work, what does a hybrid look like? How are people experiencing it, and how are we enabling them in their own environments to do their work, their best work? So I think, to touch back on the tactical aspects, listening, making sure that we are acting on that feedback, and when we can't act on it, being really vulnerable and upfront about it, and then thinking critically, making sure we are aware of the company as a whole, knowing what the business outcomes are and what it is we're trying to achieve. So it's a bit of change management, project management, and knowing when to prioritize. But we're building this as we go, and it really needs to be agile and focused more on an iterative approach.
Absolutely. And one thing that I definitely want to make sure that all the participants, the audience of this conversation, takes away with them is that we're talking about a kind of HR that will truly deliver an insane amount of value, but it's an HR that is not fully built yet. We need a lot of work to do. We have a lot of work to do. We need to do a lot of things. We need to embrace a lot of skills. We've been talking about agility. We've been talking about embracing technology. We've been talking about being better at organizational design, supporting our leaders better, listening to our people, being curious. And a lot of these skills are not yet part of the portfolio, if you will, of HR operation. And we are going to need to do a lot of work in that regard. And by the way, I thought we were like right on time, but we still have 8 minutes. So this is great. I was just rushing for the last question that I wanted to ask you, but I'm glad that we are, we still have a few more minutes. I want to ask you, I'm going to ask you all, what do you think should be I know this is going to be a hard question. The number one, I know there are many things that we got to do, but the number one priority in our list for 2021, what do you think is the number one thing we should be paying attention to in 2021? And I'm going to give you a couple of seconds to think about that. In the meantime, I want to once again let everybody know that we've been chatting about creating the best HR ever. So we described at the beginning of our conversation what that best HR looks like. We navigated a little bit through the opportunities and challenges for us to be able to create that best HR. The last question we asked was about the skills that individually we need and the capabilities that as a function we need to embrace in order to execute and deliver that best HR. And now this last question that I want to ask you is, once again, the number one priority in our 2021 agenda. Candy, I'm going to start with you.
Sure. I think back to Matt, and he's already kind of given us like, hey, go do this, take it down to the studs. And that, so he did a great job there. Number one, I think that's helped me more in 2020, which has been a year, right? Yeah. Has been to get outside of my organization, to get outside and to talk to leaders and HR leaders and, different people who think differently, who have different ideas and different thoughts. And that's why I love Hacking HR, because when you go there and you're able to like think that way and question and be curious and learn from each other, that's going to help you see what's possible. That's going to give you ideas, and it's also going to give you the motivation and inspiration and a little bit of that resilience that you need to get back into your organization and then take it down to the studs and start doing what you need to do. So I've met so many people who have been in their HR world, in their organization so long, they don't even have an idea what's happening out in the world.
Yeah. And I want to add one comment on that before turning it over to Tanal and Matt for the same question. People ask me all the time a couple of questions. One is, do you think HR will become obsolete? And if not, or how do we do not to become obsolete? So my answer and my response to the first question is, if we continue to do the same things in the same way we've always done them, we're gonna become obsolete, because administration of processes is something that technology will be taking over in a cheaper, faster, more effective, and more efficient way. So that's not our edge. Now, how do we add value and how do we stay relevant? To me, it is exactly what you said, Candy. We have to make sure that we are learning the things that are outside of the HR bubble, and we need to be able to connect that with HR operation. If we are able to think as business leaders who happen to work in the HR function, we're going to be in a totally different game than just thinking that as HR people all the time. Tanal and Matt, and then we're going to be closing down with this question.
Okay.
2021 priority, number one priority for HR.
Yeah. So top of mind for me is really being that catalyst for change. Just touching on everything everybody said, thinking through your employee experience as you would your customer experience, making sure that you are empowering your team members, elevating their experiences, giving them the tools they need for a remote work environment or a hybrid or a return work. But really being that catalyst, taking the initiative and helping your organization navigate change. And that means getting out of the centers of excellence or the HR bubble, going to different functions, talk to your finance manager, talk to your CEO, and then create those benchmarkings with different organizations that Candy touched upon. I think it's really essential to have those roundtables, thought partner with other people on what's working, what's not, so that you are building. It's more than the sum is, what is the saying? The total is more than the sum of the parts. So it's really important to think beyond what you can do and see what others are doing and add value to that. So I'll stop there. And
absolutely, Tanal. Thank you for sharing that. Matt, same question, last question. What do you think is the #1 priority for HR in 2021?
Grab your P&L. You need to get your arms wrapped around the economics of your business. We're talking about things as if everything is the same in each of our departments. There are some organizations that have experienced record growth during the pandemic. The challenges that they're facing are very different than the majority of us who've seen economic recession. Yeah. And if you're not building your HR strategy with the economics of your organization in mind, then you're throwing darts at a dartboard with a blindfold on. You have to build your strategy around where the economics of your company are headed. And that means that you may have a year of constraints. You may have a year of fiscal prudence, but you may have a year, as I mentioned, of rapid acceleration, growth, and scaling. So it's understanding where the economics of your organization are going to be in 2021, 2022, and building your strategy that supports that. So if I had one document that I could get my hands wrapped around, it's that P&L statement. One, to understand where you're going, and then two is so you can inform the roadmap. Oftentimes the P&Ls are built without HR consultation. This is not the time to do this in a vacuum. We need to have HR consultation when it comes to your P&L, because any short-term decisions that we make for 2021 will have implications in 2022 and beyond. So yes, we may have to reduce some of the investments that we're making in aspirational company programs, but the fact of the matter is that most organizations plan to last more than 12 months. So we have to be thinking both short-term and long-term simultaneously. And the language of the business is the financial statement and the financial health of our organizations.
Absolutely. Once again, going back to one of the core ideas that we have chatted in this conversation, which is we have to step outside of the HR bubble and learn non-HR stuff. And P&L should be an HR stuff. It's really never been, but it's time for us to truly understand, like you're saying, Matt, the metrics of success of our organizations, what the goals are, and how we can better align with them. So thank you, Tanal, Candy, Matt, for this incredible conversation. You guys are in the forefront of the transformation of HR to create this best HR ever that has ever existed that we've been chatting about. Thank you to the organizers of this conversation. It was a privilege for us to spend time with you. And for everybody else, I hope you continue to enjoy this great event. And please stay connected with us. We are all on LinkedIn, and just hook up with us on the Hacking HR community. We'd love to see you out there. So thank you, everybody, and we see you all soon. Thank you.